Okay, as usual, our shiurim this year are dedicated in the memory of Elisheva, Sima, Bat Zalman, Elisheva Fris, Zechona Levracha. This is going to be the swan song shiur for this season. The office tells me that next Monday there wouldn't have been a shiur anyway, because the place wouldn't be open on Erev Tisha B'Av. But as it was, I alerted the office that next Monday I'm out of Yerushalayim anyway. So we will not commence shiurim until September, and it's not sure yet if it's the first September week or a second week. In all likelihood, it's going to be Wednesday, and I don't even have the exact time yet. There's a meeting of the staff this afternoon, so I'm sure this will be well publicized in the Torah Tidbits in the coming weeks. We're talking about having the shiur, at least my shiurim, in the Rabbi Wine Shul, the Beit Knesset Hanasi, on Rehov Sishkin, close to the corner of Keren Kayemet in Rechavia, and there will be regional shiurim in Baka, in the Rabbi Finkelstein Nitzanim Shul, and the Shul of Shai Agnon in Shai Agnon Shul of Arnona. There'll be a shiur in Ramot, and the headquarters of the administration will be in Har Chotzvim. I don't know if they're going to be shiurim there, but I know that's going to be the headquarters of the administrative side of the OU. This move is taking place within the month. And therefore this center is going to be officially closed already for activities starting next week. I have very good memories here in this building, although this was not my first station of the OU shiurim. The OU used to be in Rehov Strauss, number 20. Yeah. Upstairs from where the Sefer HaSofer was, they moved across the street in later years, but that's where the initial center took place. Our good friend Phil Tranowski ran the programming, and he did it, and he was the one who initiated the Torah Tidbits, which came out as a page, a parasha page, and now it became a full-blown booklet, and you can't make Shabbos without the Torah Tidbits, and you look all over, high and low, and it's there. It's online for those who can't get it, as the hard copy, what they call the printed copy. There was an interim where Rabbi Gold, Zechron Levracha, and just a week and a half ago, we had the Askara right here. Rabbi Gold started a funded yeshiva or program for adult education in memory of Avraham Silver from Toronto, an acquaintance of his from Toronto, and that took place just a block and a half away at the Witzo Center. But then a short time afterwards, that program merged with the OU. It even started in Harnof. Good, thank you for correcting me. And it came to the center of town, and then it moved right 2 blocks away to the center. And I was part of the package, but the truth is, this is probably the longest running thing that I'm doing in Israel since our Aliyah 45 years ago. And it's almost 40 years that I'm teaching at the Israel Center in 3 different locations now, and now coming the new one will be the 4th. I'm very happy to do this. I can even tell you the years that we lived in Beersheva. So those are the years that I was at Bar Ilan doing my doctorate, and I made a triangular trip. I had to go to Ramat Gan once a week, and I was teaching in the yeshiva in Beersheva. I took the bus after my teaching at 1 o'clock to Beersheva to give a class at 3 o'clock, and then I took a bus to Yerushalayim, and I gave the shiur on Rehov Strauss, and then I took the late bus back to Beersheva. It was a triangular trip, and I kept it up, and I was very, very happy to have that opportunity to continue the shiurim here at the OU Center. Yeah. I'm not sure yet. I know until the Chagim I'll do the Machzor of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, but that I do every year. And we never finish the Machzor, so don't worry. So even if you're here 20 years ago, I promise you, Ein Beit Midrash Lelo Chidush, there'll be something new, okay? We'll find something new in the back of the book. I'm just reminded by what Rabbi Yehuda Halevi wrote, and we're going to read it in a week and a half's time, unless Kadosh Baruch Hu has plans for us that the Tzom HaChamishi is going to become a Yom Tov. And halavai, and it can happen, but in the unforeseen possibility that it's going to be Tisha B'Av, and it's going to be a fast day, and we will say the Kinot. So one of the most moving of the Kinot is Rabbi Yehuda Halevi Tzion Halo Tishali Lishlom Asirayach. They've made a song out of it. Tzion, Tzion, Tzion. People know that song. And here you see Rabbi Yehuda Levi, somewhat of a science fiction novelist, because no less than H.G. Wells or Jules Verne, where he talks about Mi'itneni Knafayim, if somebody would just give me wings. And you can see, people understand why this line was very close to my heart. Somebody, if they would give me wings, he would be able to fly from spot to spot in Eretz Yisrael. And what Rabbi Yehuda Levi was doing was plotting out a tourist map of Eretz Yisrael. So if you have a tourist map of Eretz Yisrael, it depends what organization gave you the map, and you'll see what's being highlighted. So if it's a general tourist map, they're going to highlight hotels and beaches and stuff like that, and places of entertainment, and recreation. But if it's a map that's given out by Emunah women, you're going to have highlighted all the projects of Emunah women. If it's going to be Yeshiva B'nai Akiva, you're going to have all the Yeshiva B'nai Akiva and Ulpanot. If it's going to be some borough park, it's going to have Kivrei Tzadikim dotted all over the place. My father-in-law, Vashalom, he plotted out a map here in Yerushalayim of all the public bathrooms and rated them, and I gave it a name to that map. It was called Holy John. And so everybody with their maps. So what kind of a map did Rabbi Yehuda Levi have in store for visiting Eretz Yisrael? He believed that every time a Navi, a prophet, received any type of divine transmission, it left an afterglow, a spiritual halo at that place. And if you had antennas finely tuned, you can pick up a signal or two from that place. And therefore, this is where he wanted to go. Yirmiyahu heard something here, I want to be here. Yeshayahu heard something here, I want to be here. That's what he wanted to do. And therefore he says, Mi'itneni kinafayim. First he says, Mi'itneni mishotet b'mkomot asher niglo Elokim lechozecha v'tzirecha. Somebody should allow me to float. Shotet is like a ship. I'd be able to navigate, to go to those places that Kadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to his Nevi'im, to his prophets. Mi'itneni miyaseli knafayim v'archik nidod. He's sitting in Spain, and he knows he's far away, and the boat might not be good enough. Give me wings that I can go far distance. Anid lebitrei levavi bein betarayach. I'd love to come to those who basically were the chosen ones for hearing the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And these lines in the Rabbi Yehuda Levi actually suggested to me two ideas. One was an explanation of a halakha, and that was, and some of you may have heard this idea from me, the Mishnah says, the halakha says, the Gemara Masechet Brachot, that if somebody had a miracle done to him on a private level, you feel that Kadosh Baruch Hu bailed you out and intervened to get you out of a serious, complicated, life-threatening situation, you go back to that place, you have to make a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asa li nes b'makom hazeh. God may perform the miracle for me. And the Shulchan Aruch says you can say it for your forefathers also. If it was done for your father or grandfather, she'asa la'avotai nes b'makom hazeh. And there are people, just on my last trip to Poland, somebody made that bracha in the name of a grandparent, or parent or grandparent who survived and believed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was ki ata imadi, gam ki elech b'geit tzal mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Kadosh Baruch Hu was holding the person's hand and felt that's how he or she survived, and there was a room for the bracha. And the question that I raised was, all of the brachot that we say for Yom Tov has to do with time, not with place. Shechiyanu v'kiyimanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh. So why don't we take the target date? The person felt that on Rosh Chodesh Av a nes was done for him, so say the bracha annually on Rosh Chodesh Av. Bazman hazeh, shasa li nes bazman hazeh. That would be a little bit more appropriate. Why b'makom hazeh? I believe the answer stems from what Rabbi Yehuda Levi just wrote here. That if indeed a Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence touches down momentarily in this world to assist you, then something at that place will ultimately remain forever. As the Rambam understood the Kedusha of Yerushalayim, against the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael that could be abolished. The Kedusha of Yerushalayim could never be abolished because it was a result of Shekhinah, the presence of God. And the presence of God is not going to be eliminated, neither because the Babylonians, nor the Romans, or anybody else, any other conqueror of Yerushalayim. Kedusha eina b'teila. That's a quote from the Rambam. The sanctity can never be repealed, and therefore this presence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu in a place where He intervened for a human being, that will remain forever. And therefore, the bracha is sha'asa li nes b'makom hazeh, in this place. Yeah. So Zeh HaMakom is a nickname of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is distant. That relates to Yecheskel, Baruch Kvod Hashem Mimkomo, where Yecheskel saw his nevuah in really technically Chutz La'aretz, but on the border of Eretz Yisrael, because Chutz La'aretz you're not going to get nevuah at all. But he got a weak signal on the border, Har Kvar it says. But so that's what the Mokom really means. There are other explanations to the Mokom there, but it's a good try. But so having said all this, I believe, and this is something very, very personal, the Reb Chaim Mivolozhin, the prime student of the Vilna Gaon, so he writes the book Nefesh HaChayim. And one of his theses in the Nefesh HaChayim is that after the period of prophecy, what remains basically is total commitment to Torah. Total commitment. So there's commitment to Torah and there's total commitment to Torah. There's a very, very big difference. A person who's Torato umenato. Torah is his profession. Now that has been totally eroded in our situation now, where anybody who doesn't go to the army is called Torato umenato. That's not what Chazal meant when they said it. And the proof is, it was said only about 3 of the Chachamim of the Mishnah and the Gemara. And there were plenty others who were Talmidei Chachamim, as they weren't called Torato umenato because they worked. Most of the Chachamim had work, had professions. Rabbi Yochanan Hasandla. Imagine Rosh Yeshiva who was also a shoemaker. Do you ever see that anywhere? You know, they worked. They actually. So, but there were 3. One was Shimon ben Azai. It says Libo Choshka b'Torah. Because of that, he never married. Because of that, he never married. He was married to Torah. He just couldn't leave Torah. It's tragic, I must say. This is, sometimes kol mosif goreah. It was a real problem. But it was said about Rav Sheshet, Torato umenato. It was said just about, I think it was 3, and that's it. No more than that. And what does that mean? So the Rabbi Rav Soloveitchik said, in the Hesped for his uncle, Rav Yitzchak Zev, who was known as Rav Velvel Soloveitchik, who died here in Yerushalayim in 1959. There was Erev Yom Kippur of Tafshin Chaf. He said there are 2 types of commitments to Torah. One is to be married to Torah, nasui to Torah, and one is to be engaged to Torah, erusin. Says most of us, that is 99.999%, it's erusin. What's erusin? What's engagement? Engagement, fine, you found the girl. The girl found the guy. They're not living together. They go home, they meet, they come together, little Shabbos meals, this and that. But said until the wedding, it's engagement time, and that's it. So we're engaged with Torah, and that is, you have a shir, you come at 9:15, you learn for an hour, you stay for a second shir, fine, but then you go out, you do your business, you eat lunch, and there are other things to do in life which are legitimate. They're not averas, they're not sins, they're not transgressions in any way or manner, but that's who we are. And that's why Kadosh Baruch Hu asks everybody after 120 years, Kavata itim la Torah. Did you have a Torah schedule? Kadosh Baruch Hu is not going to ask you how many pages of Gemara you finished. That's not relevant. The question is, did you have a schedule? Did you have a schedule in your life that was locked for Torah? If you say once a week I heard Kriyat Torah, okay, at least it's that. You have to say something. Once a year I went to Shul Yom Kippur, I heard Mafti Yoina. You have to have an answer, pre-prepared for that question. Kavata itim la Torah. What was my Torah schedule? So that means that people are engaged with Torah. And Chazal have a beautiful, beautiful understanding of the pasuk. Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Morasha Kihilat Yaakov. Don't read it Morasha, but Meorasa. Meorasa means engaged. So most people are connected to Torah on that level of being engaged to Torah. But there are Yechidei Sgula, very, very few, who it's upgraded to Nisuim, where they know nothing else but. Of course, that's how the Rav eulogized his uncle, in terms of being in that category, where he paraphrased what it says about Moshe Rabbeinu, Lo chen avdi Moshe, he said, Lo chen Dodi, Rabbi Yitzchak Zev. Beseda, he put him in a different category. That's the way the Rav understood his uncle, which was fair game for somebody who was a nephew. Yeah.
Does that go for women also?
For sure. For sure.
Women were not included in learning.
So the Rav's big contribution to the understanding of why women should study Torah is that while in the context of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, there are not, I wouldn't call it an exemption, but limitation with regard to the obligation of women to study Torah. But in the framework of Ahavat Hashem, love of God, the Rambam was not a romanticist. He didn't believe he's supposed to start throwing kisses to God, or kiss the mezuzah, or kiss the Torah, or kiss the kotel. He wasn't into that at all. He believed that Ahavat Hashem is intellectual. Al pi hade'ah tihiyeh ha'ava. Those are the words of Rambam at the end of Hilchot Shuvah. The love of God is directly proportional to your understanding of God, and that is accomplished by Torah study. And then he goes on to spell it out. Men, women, and children, everybody. There's nobody exempt from the mitzvah of Ahavat Hashem. And therefore, in the framework of the mitzvah of Ahavat Hashem, women are involved in Talmud Torah. Do we have examples in Halacha where you're obligated on multiple levels? The answer is yes, and it's a whole shir. I can give a whole shir on topics where when you say Kriyat Shema in the morning in davening, so there's a fulfillment of the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. There's also a fulfillment of Torah study by reading the psukim of Kriyat Shema. So you get two for the price of one. So much so that if you forgot to say or didn't have time to say the Birkat HaShachar in the morning and the bracha of Birkat HaTorah, V'tzivanu L'asok B'Torah, there's a fallback. There's a Moed Bet, a second chance, second opportunity to get that bracha in. It's Ahavat Olam or Ahavah Rabbah, V'tein Chalkeinu B'Toratecha, and so on. It's there. So you can use the Ahavah Rabbah as a Birkat HaTorah. And immediately afterwards, you're saying, Shema Yisrael, Shem Elokeinu Shem Echad. So you do have examples where sometimes you're obligated on different levels, and the Gemara says that you should not enter into the Heichal HaTfilah, the hall of prayer, but through the words of Torah. Ein omdim b'tfilah ele mitoch dvar halacha midivrei Torah, and we fulfill this by using the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. So we're piggybacking on a mitzvah that's totally independent from davening. By us, Kriyat Shema is part of the Siddur. Why is it part of the Siddur? It's part of the Siddur because we have to enter into Shmoneh Esrei from Divrei Torah. So why not use it already? So we're using a mitzvah that has nothing to do with Tfilah, by the way, but we're using it in the context of the Siddur for another purpose. So we have this sometimes. So here the Rav believed that every time a person studies Torah, there's a double fulfillment. One is Talmud Torah and one is Ahavat Hashem. With regard to women, so I've said here more often than not, 90% of the mitzvot of the Torah are obligatory to women, 90%. And everybody agrees that in order to perform a mitzvah, you have to study about the mitzvah. And therefore, there's enough Torah to go around for all the women to study about 90% of the mitzvot that they wouldn't be bored and say, I ran out of material. Nobody's going to run out of material because there's nothing. But even if you figure, do something now, study a piece of Torah that's not relevant for anybody, leprosy, negat Sarat, so whether it's men or women, it's in the context of Ahavat Hashem, because every single mitzvah, there's something that connects you with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Comes Reb Chaim from Volozhin, the prime student of the Vilna Gaon, and he says those who are on that highest level, what the Rav defined as married to Torah, not just engaged to Torah, or Torato Uminato, they are the highest level, the highest pedestal of connectivity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu possible today in light of the fact that we don't have prophecy. So we don't have prophecy. And the truth is, the one who beat him to the punch was Malachi, the Navi Malachi, who we read his Haftorah on Shabbat HaGadol, right before Pesach, and it says, Zichru Torat Moshe, remember Torat Moshe. And then it says, Hine Anochi Sholech Lachem et Eliyahu Navi Lifnei Bo Yom Hashem HaGadol V'Norah. That here Eliyahu Navi is going to come before. This led to the whole understanding that Eliyahu Navi is going to appear Lifnei Bo prior to the coming Mashiach. So the Rambam tells us in the very end of his book, Mishneh Torah, Perek Yud Bet, Hilchot Melachim, he says, Yesh min ha-chachamim, there are some chachamim who believe that prior to the coming of Mashiach will be Eliyahu Navi. You know what it means, Yesh min ha-chachamim? That means there are some that don't think that. And then he says, "V'lo yada adam ma yiyu ad sheyu." Nobody knows what's going to happen until it happens. So basically, be patient, sit back and relax, be patient. We'll see what happens. So how does the Rambam understand the pasuk? Hinei anochi sholech lachem? It almost sounds like the Rambam is part of those who didn't believe that it necessarily has to happen. How do you understand the pasuk? It means the restoration of prophecy. Where Eliyahu Navi, there was a name dropping, just like in Yecheskel Lamed Zayin, v'David Avdi Melech Alehem. Is it going to be David HaMelech? That's going to be somebody from the descendants of David HaMelech, referring to Melech HaMashiach. So it's not David the person. Fine. So there's name dropping sometimes to illustrate. So Hinei Anochi Sholech Lachem et Eliyahu Hanavi is name dropping. There'll be restoration of prophecy. But until the day of restoration of prophecy, what's left? Zichru Torat Moshe. That's what the Malachi says. And Reb Chaim Volozhin said that this is really the important connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's full-time Torah. Now, I'm the last in the world to even suggest that I'm up there with Reb Chaim Volozhin. Very far, very, very, let the record stand, very, very, very far away. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me a schut. He gave me a very, 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 very big schut. Not only to be married to my wife, that's big schut, big schut, big schut. But second biggest schut is to be able to spread Torah in different locations throughout the world. That's big schut. But what comes along with the ride is, I have a sensation of something that's there. When I pass a building that I gave a share there once, I sense it. And this is what Rabbi Yehuda Levi is saying. There's something that remains. We're driving on and then passing somewhere, and I said, "See that army base there? I gave a share there once." And I feel it, and I feel it. It's something that I'm very connected to. And if it's a place that I had a schut of being a Rav for 20 years or 14 years, whatever it may be, so obviously it's very pronounced for me. If it's a place like the Israel Center, it's very, very pronounced for me. And therefore, this is not a simple matter. Just to part and say, "Seid gesund, be well," It's, I'm not Mr. Emotion, but nevertheless, there's a certain, no, the second home is the airport. Let's Bayit Shlishi, all right? Right. Okay. Now, today's Rosh Chodesh. That was the intro. Okay. Today is Rosh Chodesh. And on the first side of the page, Psukei Zimra and Pirkei Hallel. So just to review literally in a microsecond of what we did 3-4 weeks ago when we used this page. Psukei Zimra are psukim, sentences. Sentences do not have to be said with a minyan at all. Sentences are the minimum fulfillment of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. If you say a half as pasuk, you're not in fulfillment of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. You have to say at least a full pasuk. In the world of Torah shebichtav, the written law, that is Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Tehillim, it's part of Ketuvim. You want to say Tehillim, finish the pasuk. Don't stop in the middle of a pasuk. Fine. So you have a kol pasuk de lo paska Moshe, anan lo paskinan. A pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't give us the period at the end. We don't stop at that point. That's what led the Vilna Gaon to object to the general custom of reading the Aseret HaDibrot, where we do it 3 times a year, Parshat Yitro, Parshat V'etchanan, and Chag HaShavuot, to read it according to the lowercase ta'amim trop, because it breaks the Aseret HaDibrot into psukim, I think 13 if I'm not mistaken, as opposed to the Tam Elyon, the uppercase trop, that breaks the Aseret HaDibrot into 10 commandments, which is very different. The breakdown is different. So while you understand that there are a thing called 10 commandments, but the psukim breakdown is different. And if it's Kriyat Torah, it should be done in accordance with Torah. Most shuls don't do that. Minhag of the Vilna Gaon didn't make it all over the world. In Yerushalayim, it had a higher chance because of the students of the Vilna Gaon who came 250 years ago. And some have a compromise, and that is on Shavuot to read it like 10 commandments, and on the Parshat HaShavua of Yitro and V'etchanan to read it in the lowercase as if it was just regular psukim, and you have more than 10 psukim in that kind of a reading. So you have... This is not something you need a minyan, and that's why by the Sfaradim, the Edot HaMizrach, North African communities, and so on, there's no chazan for Psukei de Zimra. There's a gentleman who sits on the side. He just reads it out loud. He's what I call a pace setter. Just everybody should be at the Baruch Hu at the same time. That's all. And that's why even in Ashkenazi settings, you can have under Bar Mitzvah boy be quote unquote the Chazan for Psukei de Zimra. And I'll stick my neck out, and there's some hyper-liberal minyanim here in Yerushalayim that may have a lady lead the Psukei de Zimra. Don't ask me if it's the right thing to do and wrong thing to do. I just said that as a stark fact. But I'm saying it because there's no minyan concept of Psukei de Zimra, as opposed to Hallel. Because Tefillah B'tzibur starts with the Kaddish before Baruch Hu. That's where you need a minyan. For the Kaddish before Baruch Hu in the morning, that's when Tefillah B'tzibur starts. And Tefillah B'tzibur is the saying of Shmoneh Esrei together with a minyan. So that's why you have to make sure you start Shmoneh Esrei with everybody. That's why the Chazan is supposed to bring everybody together to start Shmoneh Esrei together. Hallel is connected to Tefillah. How do I know Hallel is connected to Tefillah? Because there's no Kaddish between the end of the Chazarat Hashatz, the end of Shmoneh Esrei, and the saying of Kaddish. Hallel. If Hallel would be separated, we would have said a Kaddish. We would have said a Kaddish. How do we know that Tachnun that we say during the year, except for those days that we don't say? And if you're a Chassidish, half the year you don't say it, because there must be some Rebbe's yard side of something. Because there's no Kaddish between Shmoneh Esrei and Tachnun. And where's the Kaddish? After Tachnun. So that's an indicator if something goes together or does not go together. I mean, so much so, when our Rebbe of Soloveitchik was struggling, literally struggling with the issue of Hallel on Yom Ha'atzmaut, and the struggle wasn't his understanding, his deep understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways in creating the state of Israel. He articulated it often enough. He was a halachist that had problems with introducing new things into the Siddur. So that was the issue. Rav Lichtenstein spoke about this in length, about the Rav's opinion. And that's why he would suggest that to say the Chatzi Kaddish after Shmoneh Esrei and then get the Hallel in afterwards. And then it becomes like reading Tillim, basically, not so much saying Hallel. He was more comfortable with that kind. But that's what he said once, and then another time he said something else. And as I tell people, the Rav said 1,000 things about Yom Ha'atzmaut, and they're all true, because everybody who heard something from the Rav, I'm not doubting one bit. They heard it. But what I printed in my book on the conversation of the Rav was something that the Rav actually wrote to a letter as a tshuva, as a responsum, very, very rare responsum to the Halachic Commission of the RCA in 1950. How should the rabbin in America deal with Yom Ha'atzmaut? And the answer was, Heim Amru v'Heim Amru. They said and they said. Now, that phrase is used in the Gemara when sometimes the Chachamim made a restriction, so they can also back off on the restriction under certain circumstances. Because they made the restriction, so they can say that it's now permissible here and there. Beseda, that's how it's used. Now, I didn't understand what this was written to. It was preserved in a letter in the appendix of the doctoral dissertation of Rabbi Louis Bernstein, Zechron Levracha, who was a rabbi in Windsor Park in Queens, and he taught Jewish history at the YU. And I had him also as a teacher for something, and for Hebrew language. So I asked the Rav what he meant by Heim Amru, and he said very simply, he says, Heim Amru, did I make up Yom Ha'atzmaut? They did. It was the Rabbanut Rashid. And therefore, Heim Amru, they'll say what to do. And the answer to the Rabbanut, to the RCA, the Rabbinical Council of America, was, do what the chief rabbinate says to do. That's all. That became the official position of the Rav and the RCA for Yom Ha'atzmaut, which was, by the way, on Yom Ha'atzmaut, to say Hallel after Shmoneh Esrei, before Kaddish, but without a bracha, and after Yom Yerushalayim, after the 6-day war, to say Hallel with a bracha. And that's what they did in the Maimonides school for years, until they forgot the Rav passed away, and people started forgetting what the Rav said, and okay, that's a different parsha. But let's take a look at what happens with Rosh Chodesh. On the first side of the page, but towards the bottom, the Rav believed that Hallel is always called Pirkei Hallel, chapters. And the reason is, it has nothing to do with psukim. It has to do with a type of chazan and choir. But the chorus is everybody. Where people didn't say the whole Hallel. The chazan said pasuk by pasuk, and the people responded. And the only question is, what was the response? According to one, the response was Hallelujah. And I mentioned this just a few weeks ago when we started this page. How many times would there be hallelujah if this minhag would still be in force today? It would be a nice round number, 123. So what's 123? Today's Rosh Chodesh Av. It's the yahrzeit of Ahron HaKohen, who lived till 123. So what? And the Rav explained, because the Mishnah says in Masechet Sotah that the reading of Hallel was the way they read it in Shirat Hayam, at the Yam Suf. So how was it done at the Yam Suf? Moshe Rabbeinu read the Shira. Not everybody. What do you think? He handed out handouts? How in the world did the people know what to say? Ashira Lashem ki ga'o ga'a sus v'rochvo ramavayam. And then Moshe Rabbeinu continues. Ozi v'zimrat ya v'hi l'Yeshua ze eli vanveo le'aviv ramenu. And then everybody strikes up. Ashira Lashem ki ga'o ga'a sus v'rochvo ramavayam. Moshe Rabbeinu continues the next pasuk, and everybody pipes up. Ashira Lashem ki ga'o ga'a sus v'rochvo ramavayam. And that's what happens by the lady side, by Miriam, where she's mentioned as Achot Ahron, and it says, and they had tupim v'im cholot, they had all kinds of tambourines, and some say to drown out the Kol Isha, because some say that it was done to drown out the Kol Isha, some say it was done to keep the beat, or whatever. Shiru Lashem ki ga'o ga'a. And people have asked, why does it say Shiru Lashem ki ga'o ga'a, and not Ashira Lashem ki ga'o ga'a? And some have actually suggested they didn't hear from the other side. They didn't catch it. They thought they heard the word Shiru. They heard Ashira, and Shiru, and that's what they said. Okay, besed it could be. It could be. I'm not ruling that out. Some have given explanations to what the difference between Ashira, because Moshe Rabbeinu said Ashira Lashem ki goga, but how did OUisrael know that they're supposed to respond? So the second in command, who was Ahron HaKohen, he wasn't a Kohen yet, Ahron HaLevi at the time, he told people, all right, let's go. Ashira Lashem ki goga. So he was the one who led the response to the Shirat Hayam. So the Mishnah says, Ki korei et Hallel. Shirat Hayam was like they read Hallel. The Hallel is like they read Shirat Hayam. So in honor of Aaron, who led the response to the sounding off of Moshe Rabbeinu, we would respond 123 times, Kiminyan Shnotav Sha'aron, corresponding to the years of Ahron HaKohen in the Hallel. So that's not our minhag today. So then there's another minhag, and that the Chazan says every line of each chapter. So you have chapters. So Lolanu is not a new chapter. Lolanu is a new chapter, but Hashem Zecharanu is not a new chapter. When we say Hallel somewhat truncated, we chop a parak in half. We chop two chapters in half and read the second half of that parak. So B'tzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim Beit Yaakov Me'am Lo'ez. That's a chapter in itself. That's Tilim Kuf Yud Dalid. So the Chazan said the next line also, and everybody piped up, B'tzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim Beit Yaakov Me'am Lo'ez. They said the first line. After the Chazan said each line, the people read the first line of that chapter. Now we have a remnant of that minhag by Hodu Lashem Kitov. It's exactly what we do. The Chazan says each line, Yom Ano Yisrael Kiulam Chazdo, the Kahal, Hodu Lashem Kitov, Kiulam Chazdo. Now, of course, you may hear people mumble under their breath. Right? They get the next line in because they think they get more brownie points, if they said more. But that's not the minhag. The minhag is just to respond, Hodu Lashem Ki Tov Ki Leolam Chazdo, which is a vestigial organ. It's a remnant of the minhag of what the Rambam. The Rambam then goes on to say, and there are various minhagim in saying Hallel, and I think this is the way it should be done. He gives his preferred option, and it's one great example where the Rambam in the Mishneh Torah, and I have a chapter about this in my book on the Rambam, that the Rambam tried to close the door on every single halacha and not have you think about other possibilities. But when it came to minhag, he was hyper sensitive to the fact that minhag, even though it's a lower order of Torah Shebal Peh than pure halacha, nevertheless, psychologically, people are locked into minhag, because minhag is ego, minhag is family, minhag is my location, so don't mess with my minhag. And the Rambam knew that, and therefore he many times allowed flexibility in minhag, and he said, Akol Lefia minhag, okay, just yesterday we heard a share from Rav Yol Ben Nun at the Yemei Yun in Alon Shvut, He talked about Parshat Hazinu, and the Rambam says that that there was a minhag to say Shirat Hayam every day. Interestingly, after Yishtabach. We say it before Yishtabach. Just in the same place where in Aseret Yemei Tshuva, we add Shira Malot Mimamakim for the 10 days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. So there's like a pause in the action there. After Yishtabach, we throw in Shira Malot Mimamakim. The Rambam said they threw in Shirat Hayam, Oz Yashir Moshe, at that point. And then he says, and others threw in Ha'azinu, Shirat Ha'azinu. And others had both Shirat Hayam and Ha'azinu. And his bottom line is Hakol Lefi HaMinhag. Notice he doesn't even take sides on that. Hakol Lefi HaMinhag, don't, whatever they do is all, du bist gerecht, you're also right. They said that you're right. Okay. So the Rambam says this with regard to Hallel. They're all right, and there are many minhagim with regard to Hallel. But let's take a look at the last lines of the first page, where it's source number 8, but it's the last paragraph where it says Halacha Zayin. And here the Rambam says, Mikomot shosim shnei yamim tovim, the places that do 2 days Yom Tov. The places that do 2 days Yom Tov. You didn't get a page? There should be there's little pages there. Get a page. Yeah. The bottom of the first side. Mikomot she'osim yamim tovim shnei yamim, the places we give 2 days Yom Tov, gomrim et ha'halel be'echad ve'esrim yom. So you complete the Hallel. It's complete Hallel. And those are 8 days of Sukkot, 8 days of Hanukkah, the first day of Pesach, and the 1 day of Shavuot that we have. So there's your 21 days. I'm sorry, no, that's 18 days. It's 18 days, but if there's Yom Tov Sheni, add 3 days. So then you're going to have 21 days. Fine. And he spells it out, just in case you can't make the calculation yourself. Tisha Yemei Achak, 9 days of Sukkot, that is the second day of Shmini Atzeret, which we call Simchat Torah. In Chutz La'aretz, Shmona Yemei Chanukah, 2 days of the first day of Pesach, 2 days of Atzeret with Shavuot, fine. Those are the days we complete the Hallel, and parenthetically, according to the Rambam, the bracha is Vitzivanu Ligmor et Hallel. That's his nusach. Ligmor et Hallel. Now, Ashkenazim say, Likro et Hallel. And there are some that have a compromise. When you have the 18 days of completing Hallel, or 21 days in Chutz La'aretz, you say Ligmor et Hallel. But when we say Hallel fragmented, like Rosh Chodesh, and the remaining days of Pesach, you say Vitzivanu Likro et Hallel, because you're not being Gomer et Hallel. By the way, this created an idiomatic expression in modern day Hebrew, Ligmor alav et Hallel, means that you shower him with praise. You just can't stop. You're effervescent about praising a person. Who gomer alav et Hallel. It's like finishing. That means it just you can't get it out so much. It's a beautiful phrase. Ligmor alav et Hallel. It comes from the nusach of this bracha that Ashkenazim don't say. Never say it. Ashkenazim say likro et Hallel both when we complete the Hallel as well as when we say Hallel fragmented. The Rambam says there's only one bracha, Ligmor et Hallel. Why? Because when it's fragmented, there's no bracha. And that's what he's going to say now. He says, Ava b'roshei chodashim, like today, Kriyat Hallel minag. It's a custom. Ve'ina halach mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah. U'minag zeh b'tzibur. This minag is only in public company, only in a minyan. Lefikach, therefore, Korim b'dilug. We read it segmented. We'll see what the source is, where this comes from. Ve'ein mevorchin alav. We don't make a bracha, says the Rambam. Why? She'ein mevorchin ala minag. We don't make a bracha on a custom. V'yachid lo yikra klal. And if you're home on Rosh Chodesh and couldn't make it to shul, according to the Rambam, don't quote me wrong on this one now, the Rambam says you don't say Hallel at all. It's only a tzibur custom. And then he says, V'im hitchil, if you began saying Hallel at home, so Yashlim v'yikra b'dilug kederach shekorim et tzibur. If you started already, so go right ahead. It's Tillim, so what's the difference? But don't make a bracha. V'chein b'sha'ar yemei Pesach, so too the other days of Pesach, aside from the first day, korim b'dilug kirashei chodashim, you read it segmented, just like the others, without a bracha. This is the Rambam's opinion. Ashkenazim did argue on this vehemently. So it's what's not on your page. You can turn the page over and then pay attention to what I'm going to read by heart. We'll get back to the page. The Gemara in the end of Masechet Ta'anit, Daf Kafchet, says the following. Rav is the Amorah Rav, the beginning of the Babylonian Amoraim. He is from Eretz Yisrael. It's not on the page. He is from Eretz Yisrael. He's a student of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, has smicha from Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, and then leaves Eretz Yisrael for Bavel, and he becomes the great, great personality who's the kickoff of the Talmud Bavli. He gets to Bavel. Rav ikla Bavel. Rav arrives in Bavel. Comes to Shul on Rosh Chodesh, and he almost gets a heart attack. He says, Chazinhu, the kakaru Hallel b'reish yarcha. He sees that they're reading Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. Nobody read Hallel on Rosh Chodesh in Eretz Yisrael. Savar, he thought, Lav Sukinu. Got to stop him. Chevra, mistake. Savar, he thought, Lav Sukinu. I got to stop this. Kevan de Chaza de Kamedalge diluge. When he saw they were skipping, Amar, he said to himself, Shmamina, apparently, minag avotehem bidehem. It must be their minag, the Babylonian custom. All right, let it go. Minag, have a custom. It's a bavel, it's a golus minag. We never heard of this in Eretz Yisrael. Now, just when do we start skipping? We start skipping in the 3rd chapter of Hallel, right? The first chapter is Halukah Alu Hashem Avdei Hashem Yishem Hashem Vorach Me'at Olam Miz Hashem Hashem Vov Mulal Hashem Hashem Rama Kol Goyim Hashem Al Kohen Kodov B'Tzeit Yisrael Mitzrayim. The man is palpitating, and he's sitting. I gotta stop this before it's getting too far. It's getting out of hand. And all of a sudden, they don't say Lolanu Hashem Lolanu. It jumps to Hashem Zachanu. Whew. Wow. Okay. So it's a custom. And then they see the chapter afterwards. They skip that part of that chapter and just continue Ma Shiv Lashem Kol Tagmo Alai. That's what you must be from the Rabbeinu Tam people, probably, right? Not a Matzah. You must be a Rabbeinu Tam person, right? So you may have learned the Tosfot in Eruvin, Sadik Vav. You may have learned that Tosfot, right? The Malach taught it to you. He taught the ladies too. The Rav told me that. The Malach taught the women, Kol HaTorah Kula. Okay, so the Shivyonut, the forgetting of Torah was equality. Everybody forgot the same way. Asked the same question. He says, 1 second. Why didn't he pipe up when they said the bracha? So obviously, they didn't say the bracha. That's what Rabbeinu Tam suggests, that apparently they didn't say the bracha, and Rashi was of the opinion that there's no bracha on Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, because that's how he understood the Gemara. Because if there would have been a bracha, he wouldn't have piped up, he wouldn't have calmed down when they skipped. Because that's already, if this Chazan sang B'Tzeit Yisrael on Rosh Chodesh, which in our shul the guy would have gotten shot, on Rosh Chodesh to sing. But now, what about the bracha? So it seems that there was no bracha. But then Rabbeinu Tam says, no. It could be he didn't hear the bracha. Could be he didn't hear it. I don't know, whatever. Came in late. Could be came late. That's what he said. Came late, missed the bracha. And he says, what are they doing here? Because he came for the second minyan. So he came to put on tefillin and start Psuga de Zimra for the first minyan early. He was early for the first minyan. Last year Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. Right, good. So there Rabbeinu Tam actually says that we do say a bracha. I'm going to read it from a Tosfot in Masechet Ta'anit, where Tosfot says, Avu b'sha'ar minhag kamo kriyat Hallel va'acharini kamo oto minhag va'adai mevorchin. Tosfot, the authors of the Tosfot, and this is Rabbeinu Tam and his colleagues afterwards, they say that we do say a bracha on certain minhagim. And it goes on to explain that you can say a bracha on reading of Torah shebichtav, even if it's not in the context of something that's obligatory. And the proof is, many of us here in Shalayim will have on Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, the reading of Shir HaShirim, Ruth, and Kohelet, respectively, from a klaf, from a Megillah, and the Balkaira is going to say, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mikra Megillah, the same bracha we make by Purim. Now Purim, that's a mitzvah. The others, that's a minhag. It's kind of good. Nobody said, it's not mentioned in the Mishnah of the Gemara at all. There's an addendum to the Gemara, it's called Masechet Sofrim, and it's part of the early Geonim, and they suggested this minhag of Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot to read the Megillas, and there's a bracha, and the Balkar is going to say Shechianu. He's going to say Shechianu, and the Vilna Gaon said that's the way to go, and that's why here in Yerushalayim we read it with a Megillah, and we make the brachot. So if you can make a bracha on that kind of a minhag, why can't you make a bracha on Hallel? It's just Tillim, but you're saying it as an upgrade. You're not saying it as Tillim. You've upgraded it to a Hallel. You're calling it Hallel, so it can be with a bracha as well. The Ravid, Rabbi Avraham ben David, he didn't like this. The Rambam, I'm going to read the Rambam that I don't have. That I do have on the page? Yeah, I do have on the page. On the second side, where it's source number 10. No. Not on this page. Top. The Rambam actually said, no, it's called Hilchot Brachot. It's not on the page. Kol davar shehu minhag, anything that's of a custom, avo pisha minhag neviim hu. Even if the prophets instituted it, like taking an arava and a shana rabbah. So we take an arava and a shana rabbah. Nobody makes a bracha on that. That's a classic minhag, and so on. So he says, Ein tzarich lomar minhag chachamim. Certainly a minhag that the chachamim instituted, not the prophets, like the reading of Hallel and Rosh Chodesh, or Chol Hamoed of Pesach, ein mevorchin alav. And then Rabbi Avraham ben David from South France, the Ravid, who argues on the Rambam often enough, he says, he tries to explain why we do say a bracha on Rosh Chodesh, why we do say it. It's interesting that he thought that maybe for the remaining days of Pesach, you shouldn't say a bracha. That becomes a whole shir in itself. That the complicated, the difference between why we say half Hallel on the Pesach, the rest of the days, and why on Rosh Chodesh. But Rosh Chodesh, it's categorically a minhag, and there's a big machloket here in the Rishonim. So everybody will do like they do. The Ashkenazim will say a bracha, and the Sfardim won't say a bracha. And just in case you were worried that the Rambam tells us, and he warns us carefully in the laws of brachot, to be careful about not saying a bracha levatala or bracha she'inat tzricha. The Gemara tells us it's a biblical violation, lo tisa et shem Hashem elokecha lashav, one of the 10 commandments, not to say God's name in vain. And therefore, if you're not sure if you should say a bracha or not, don't say it. Do the mitzvah without the bracha. That's all. You're not sure? You can always do the mitzvah. Nobody's going to get punished for doing the mitzvah even if he or she wasn't obligated. But the bracha, if you're not sure 100%, don't say the bracha. So Rav Avad Yosef is worried about all the Ashkenazim, that after 120 years, the neshama is going to come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to whip out how many times you said a bracha on Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, that, I have the Rambam sitting right here in Gan Eden, and he's telling me no bracha. So what are you going to do? Rav Avadia calmed us all down. He said there's a principle in halacha, b'makom sheyesh minhag ein chosheshim lebracha levatala. Wherever there's a minhag, if they're accustomed to say a bracha, nobody is going to be held accountable for a bracha in vain. Now I can sleep comfortably, and it's an important principle, by the way, very important principle. And where is it derived from? The Yom Tov Sheni. Yom Tov Sheni. Yom Tov Sheni is no longer a doubt. Everybody knows that today is Rosh Chodesh. Absolutely. If you listen carefully to the Moiled, right? There'll be a new moon, right? The Moiled Ved Zayin, remember the song? Yeah, ba 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 ba. There was a nice song about the Moiled. Sima Rakov, I just recently looked it up. The Moiled was at 1 a.m. last night. Were you up for it? No, the Yankees won already, so there was no need to, right? The Moiled was 1 a.m. and a few minutes afterwards, and a few chalakim afterwards, and so on, which means now it's Rosh Chodesh. Last night wasn't Rosh Chodesh yet the Gabbai said, Ya Levi. That's a shir in itself. The Rav gave an unbelievable shir to explain what the night of Rosh Chodesh is all about, why we say Ya Levi. But Rosh Chodesh technically would have started at 1 a.m. with the visual sighting of the moon. But it doesn't work like that today. Today it's a calendar thing. It's a calendar thing. And today is Rosh Chodesh. So today, who needs the second day of Yom Tov? So we see it as a punishment for those who haven't come in Aliyah. They get the second day Yom Tov, and that's it. This year, Rosh Hashanah, we're going to get the 3 days. It's Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. But they're going to get it 3 times for Sukkot and for Shmini Atzeret, which means they'll have to do Erev Tavshilin 3 times on Wednesday, because of It's a complicated life in Chutz La'aretz. And especially if it's on a weekday and then you have to take it off for vacation day. Oy, nebuch. See, here in Israel, nobody works anyway, the whole year. So it's not an issue. Not an issue, But nobody works at Chol Hamoed. I mean, that's for sure not. So yeah. At the Seder, everybody says Hallel at the Seder. The question is whether to say Hallel during Ma'ariv on the night of Pesach. But everybody has Hallel in the Seder. That's a special halacha of Hallel and Seder night. That we'll do before Pesach. Nobody says a bracha in the middle of the Seder. Nobody says a bracha in the middle of the Seder. There's a bracha at the end of Hallel that we say, concluding the Seder with Hallel. Right. But that's a different Hallel. It's the same text, but it's a different Hallel. Fine. Where was I? Rivka's not here. Right. So I said we are in we now are on Rosh Chodesh 100%. But Yom Tov Sheni, there'd be no need to have Yom Tov Sheni at all in Chutz La'aretz because we know exactly when Rosh Chodesh is. We know it. This was instituted when they didn't know in Bavel when they made Rosh Chodesh in Eretz Yisrael because CNN wasn't working that day, so they didn't have communication. But now we do have communication. Now we have calendars. It all works with a calendar. So why have Yom Tov Sheni? So Gemara says this. Minhag avotenu b'yadeinu. This is our custom. So it became a different category of why we keep Yom Tov Sheni. And then came all kinds of interesting philosophical reasons, like the author of the Tanya, Zalman from Liadi, founder of Chabad. He said that Eretz Yisrael is a sponge that's saturated with Kedusha, and it can only handle 24 hours of Yom Tov. But Chutz La'aretz is a dried out sponge. And a dried out sponge can saturate more. It can take 48 hours of Kedusha. So he didn't say it lishvach of Chutz La'aretz that it takes 48 hours of kedusha. He said it lignai as that it's missing a lot. That it's absent of delinquent of kedusha and so on. So you see that we do make brachot on minhag. So the Gemara says, but look at all these brachot. But because of minhag avotenu v'yadeinu, Chachamim said we should say. The Gemara says something interesting, that if they would have instituted Yom Tov Sheni without the requisite brachot, like on Seder night, you know how many brachot you have on Seder night? So many brachot, multiple brachot on Seder night. And on the second night of Pesach in Chutz La'aretz, you make all those brachot. You say all the brachot. So we know that it's not Yom Tov. We know it's the 16th and not the 15th of Nisan. So the Gemara says, Shema Yizalzelubo. If we would have instituted it without brachot, people would not have taken it seriously. It would have been, with time, it would have been dropped. They would have said, no, it's not serious. In Hebrew we say, lo retzini. It's not serious. Not serious. And in order to maintain it, Chazal said, you know what? Let's keep it with the brachot. When you keep with the brachot, ooh. And by the way, there were people who used that in 1948 with regard to the question of Hallel on Yom Ha'atzmaut, yes bracha, not bracha. Those who argued that we should have a bracha said that if we do it without a bracha, less people are going to take it seriously. That if we do it with a bracha, dafka people are going to make it more serious. And the other side said, who are we to make new institutions? And therefore, to say Tillim, anybody can say Tillim, but to do it with a bracha, that's problematic. But somehow after the 6-Day War, the Rabbanim of the Rabbanut Orshit came around. Rav Goren had an opinion on this as well. So it became a different story. But this was all an outgrowth of the question of Yom Tov Sheni and so on. I'll just tell you that last Friday was the 14th yard site of our great Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Amital of Yeshivat Har Etzion, Zichrono Livracha. And when we were chutznikim back 52 years ago, can't believe it, that's when I came to Israel to study in the yeshiva. So in those days, nobody went back to Chutz La'aretz for Pesach. It just was unheard of. Now, not everybody had family to go to yet in 1973. So the Rosh Yeshiva, both Rav Lichtenstein and Amital, invited, we were Sachakol 19 guys at the time, so they invited everybody to come to their Seder, split up, whatever. So some of the guys in Yeshiva naturally gravitated to Rav Lichtenstein, some naturally gravitated to Amital, and I was caught in the web because I could have gone to either one. I just felt I could have gone to either one. But Rabbi Mital tapped me on the shoulder a few days before Pesach, and he says, you're coming to me. He says, why? Because by Rav Lichtenstein, they're going to talk Torah and talk Torah and talk Torah and talk Torah. He's going to look at his watch, going to see it's 15 minutes before Chatzot, and they didn't eat yet, and he's going to gobble up the matzah and the moror and the koirech and the afikaimen. A meal you're not getting there. You come to my house, at 10:30 we stop talking and we start eating. And then anybody wants to talk, we'll say what they want. You think this is just... Rav Meir Lichtenstein, Rav Ahron's son, I heard him in Matan a few years ago, and he said publicly, after I got married, I discovered that Seder night came with a meal. He said it publicly, and I went over and I gave him a big yasher koyach, because I thought Rabbi Mital was just, jiving me. But it wasn't. It was real. It was real. So Rabbi Mital, okay, so two of the guys who were by Rabbi Mital, and Rabbi Mital had said there were 50 people around the table. He had a lot of people in the neighborhood who didn't have starim, and all kinds of loose neshamot he brought into the Seder, and he was really good. He had a 5-ring circus day talking to everybody. He was very talented, the way he ran the Seder. So two of the guys we were all from Chutz La'aretz, but we had the Psak Halacha that we're keeping either one day Yom Tov or what they call 1.5, not to Malacha on the second day, but certainly not to have a second Seder. But two of the guys came equipped with a Psak from their rabbis in America that they have to keep 2 days Yom Tov full with a second Seder. The Chutzpah, they asked the Rebbetzin, the Rabbanit, if she can make a second Seder for them. I mean, that's called Hagam Lichbosh et HaMalka Imi Babayit. So the Amitals were such tzaddikim, they said they'll do it. But Rav Mital asked me to come with my guitar. Why? Because he said that Rav Kook was asked by the hotels in Yerushalayim if they can have a second Seder for tourists. And he said, Rav Kook was of the opinion that you're not allowed to have any public display of Yom Tov Sheni. You're not allowed to have a Yom Tov Sheni minyan, because that's by definition public. If it's a minyan, certainly not a Seder in a hotel. And the only way that hotel said they have to do it, business, you have to do it. So he said the only way you could do it is you have a live orchestra playing music to show that it's just a model Seder. That's it. Rabbi Tal said, you come with your guitar, you're going to play music the whole time so they'll all understand that this is a model Seder. Okay, and I did it. But the big chidush was the guys were making the brachot. So guy makes a bracha where he thinks he should be making a bracha. You think you should answer Amen. Rabbi Mital's response was, Od bracha levatala, Od bracha levatala. Another bracha in vain. Another bracha in vain. That's like taking the knife and wow, digging it in. Wow. That was really, really something. So they do it because we don't have the halachic apparatus to change it. I have a list already of things that I'm going to recommend to the reconstituted Sanhedrin, what they should be doing. The first is dump Yom Tov Sheni. It's one of the things that they have to do. Second thing is dump the restriction on medication on Shabbat. The restriction on medication on Shabbat had to do with grinding herbs, which nobody's grinding herbs. Everybody knows that we have no possibility of changing it. So what do you do when a person's a Rav? What does a Rav do? He says, it's asur, but for you it's mutar. For you it's mutar, and for you it's mutar. Why is it you? Because the doctor said you have to take it. So that's an override of a rabbinic restriction. So I pop pills on Shabbat also, because I have to, because the doctor said I have to take this one every single day, every single day, every single day, every single day, and include Shabbat. Person has to take antibiotics for 10 days. As far as I know, you can have at least one Shabbat there. Don't not take the antibiotics. And the reason is because once a doctor says you have to take it, so it overrides the Isur D'Rabbanan. But I don't want to have an override every Shabbat. Tell me that it's okay. I'm not grinding herbs. I'm going to the pharmacy and having the pharmacy make a good living on the pills. So that's something they're going to have to change. They're going to have to change a lot of things. And one of the things is we don't have the authority to make that change. That's the problem. That's the core issue. And we just get around in a Jewish head. We get around, a head to here and a head to there, and so on. But Yom Tov Sheni is one of those as well. So we're just going to sign off by saying that Hallel is two things. It's Hallel, it's also petition, Tchina. We're asking a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We ask Kadosh Baruch Hu, An Hashem Hoshiana, An Hashem Hatzlichana. We say, it begins with Min HaMeitzar Karati. We're in trouble sometimes. That's not something we're singing and jumping for joy. Min ha-meitzar karati, meitzar from the word Mitzrayim. Min ha-meitzar karati. We're in a bind, and we ask Kadosh Baruch Hu to help us get out of the bind. Every Hallel takes into consideration that we're not out of the woods yet. There's still things that we need a Kadosh Baruch Hu desperately, as we do today. On Seder night, we end with V'nomar lifanav shira chadasha. Hallelujah. The Rav said that's not a new Kalbach Niggin. It's not a new lyrics. It's going to be a different style of Hallel. It's going to be Hallel without petition, without tchina. We won't have to beg a Kadosh Baruch Hu any longer, because it's going to be Lo Ra'av L'Lechem V'lo Tzama L'Mayim Ki Im L'Shmoa Et Divrei Hashem. Thank you for coming to all the sessions. That's all.